In 1775, the Continental Congress created the Chaplin Corps. Under the command of General George Washington, each soldier was required to attend worship service every Sunday. While other armies advanced on their feet, Washington's troops advanced on their knees. It's time for the Chaplain's Report with Caleb Colquitt on tactics.
Chaplin's report this morning comes from the book of Ruth, and we are going to be talking about Ruth for some time. I don't know why. I just got it in my head one day that we were going to go through Ruth, and I guess it was because I was reading it on my own time. But I wanted to go through Ruth and sort of continue this series that we've started on her, because I think there's just so many powerful messages contained within this book about humans and human relationships and what we should be looking for in other people, both as a mate and just in general, in surrounding ourselves with people that encourage us and help us in our faith. So to give you a little bit of backstory on this, what's going on here is that Ruth has now gone out into the fields, and she's gleaning in the fields of a man named Boaz. So she's gleaning, she's taking food from his field that he has left behind for those that are less fortunate. And you'll remember that we were talking about yesterday in the introduction to Ruth 2, that she is seeking out because she's gleaning because she needs the food, but she's also gleaning for somebody that she would find favor in their sight. In other words, she's hoping that the person who happens to own this particular field is somebody that may or may not be a potential husband. And so she goes out into this field who happens to be a relative of Naomi's, her mother-in-law. And when she does, this is what happens. And we talked about yesterday that she went out there and sought him out, but we also get to now see Boaz's reaction to her. So we look at Ruth 2, verses 8 through 11. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Listen carefully, my daughter. Do not go to glean in another field. Furthermore, do not go from this one, but stay here with my maids. Let your eyes be on the field where they reap, and go after them. Indeed, I have commanded the servants not to touch you. When you are thirsty, go to the water jars and drink from what the servants draw." Then, if we'll look down in verse 10, "Then she fell on her face, bowing before the ground, and said, 'Why have I found favor in your sight, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?' Boaz replied to her, 'All that you have done for your mother-in-law, after the death of your husband, has been fully reported to me, and how you left your father and your mother and the land of your birth and came to a people that you did not previously know.'" So I think this says a lot about who Boaz is as a man. And we were talking a lot about Ruth seeking Boaz out. Now we're starting to see this relationship develop between the two of them. So yesterday we were talking about how important it is for Ruth to look for a man that can be a provider for her, somebody that wants to take care of her and protect her and has the means and the desire, the work ethic to do all those things and to be the kind of man that can provide for a wife. That's important for Ruth to look at, but that's the baseline. That's the bare minimum. That's the starting point. When we're going out and looking for relationships, when young ladies are looking for young men to be their spouses, that should be the bare minimum. That should be really anybody that isn't willing to do that, that's a non-starter. You don't even consider that person. After they've met that threshold, then you can start looking at, okay, who would be a good partner for me? And this is really the kind of stage that we're seeing proposed in Ruth 2, because now Ruth has finally met Boaz and she starts questioning him. And really, this, again, has a powerful message for both men and women from different perspectives. I think the message that this passage gives for women is that you look for a man that not only can provide, but is compassionate enough and wants to provide. In other words, he's able to provide, but he's not doing so because he feels obligated to or because he feels like he's getting something out of you. He's doing so because he has compassion on you. Boaz apparently knew Ruth and Naomi's story, but he wasn't doing this because he thought that Ruth could be a potential mate for him or anything like that. The reason Boaz did it is because he wanted to. Keep in mind, for his fields to be ripe for gleaning, that meant that Boaz, long before Ruth ever got to his doorstep, had already made a conscious decision in his heart. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave aside a portion of my land in accordance with God's law to do so to provide for those that are less fortunate. I mean, sure, it's land that I could harvest and I could make some money off of it and all of that. But I have a lot, I have plenty, and because of that, I want to obey God and do what he said and leave food for the less fortunate. This is a compassionate individual. And you remember when Jesus is talking on the Sermon on the Mount, and he talks about if the law compels you to do so-and-so, for example, go with somebody a mile, go with them too. If somebody asks for your coat, give them your cloak also. This is the kind of person that Boaz was. Because what Boaz is doing is he's saying to Ruth, not only am I allowing you to glean out of my fields, but you stay in my field and you don't go to anybody else's. There'll be plenty here for you to take care of. And I tell you what, since you don't have a place to stay, you can stay with my maids. And if you want anything to drink, you can go ahead and go to the jars of water and do that too. All the law required him to do was to provide gleaning. All it required him to do is to leave parts of his field to allow him to do that. And he says, no, that's not enough. I'm going to go above and beyond and to comply with the spirit of God's law, helping those that are less fortunate than me. And then Ruth is really taken aback by this and asks, why? I'm a foreigner. Nobody has treated me this way. Why are you going to all these great lengths? And Boaz gives a great answer. He says, because I know your story. I know what you're willing to do for the people around you. I know the kind of person that you are because you left your land, you left everything you knew to take care of your mother-in-law. He has a respect for her. Now keep in mind, this is a man who is very wealthy talking to a beggar woman that has no means to provide for herself. That's why she's gleaning in the first place. And yet, there is a very clear sense of respect that comes from Boaz. And I think that this is a real testament to the kind of man that he is, and something that young women should be looking for in a mate. You don't only look for somebody that's willing to provide for you, but somebody that is willing to provide for others, to be a resource to others, that people around him are going to respect because he does go above and beyond, and he does do the best that he can to help others out, whether he's getting something out of it or not. That's the kind of man that women should be looking for in a husband. And I think that you can also see from this passage, there is a powerful lesson for what men should be looking in women. Boaz is not saying, well, the reason I'm doing all this and the reason I'm going this extra mile with you is because I think you're really attractive. No, because I want you to be my wife. No, he doesn't say that either. He's not looking for anything out of her. Why is he so kind to her? Because he says, I see the goodness in you. I see the kind of person that you are. I see that you are like me in the sense that you're willing to help people. And so, young men, when you are looking for somebody to be your mate, that's what you need to be looking for. Somebody that has strong family values, that has a strong sense of loyalty, and somebody that is willing to do things that are out of their way for other people. And in this case, also a woman that is willing to seek after God, because you remember she made a commitment back when we were looking at some of the earlier verses, that she is going to stay with Naomi and that her God would be my God. That's what Ruth was saying. She has a commitment to follow the Lord. And Boaz sees that not only in her words, but also now in her actions, in that she has come to a foreign land to be with Naomi. And she was not only a beggar, but a foreign beggar. And Boaz still has this sense of respect for her because he sees her actions and he sees her kindness and her compassion and her empathy. And it's something that he admires and talks about in her. So Boaz wants to help Ruth because he understands that she wants to help others too, just like he does. She may not necessarily have the means that he does, but the attitude is the same. And so we see this kinship starting to develop between the two of them, and that forms the basis for a strong relationship between the two of them. And that's really the overall message here. This relationship starts to blossom because both of them have their priorities straight and they're looking for the right thing in a mate. Boaz is a full, complete person who is also looking for another full, complete person that has similar ideas and similar values to him, that wants to follow God and to do so by helping other people. Doesn't matter that they don't have the same means or that they're helping people in different ways. The attitude and the underlying principles and virtue are still there. And it's a strong message. If you're seeking out a relationship, that's the kind of person that you want to be with. And Boaz understood it, and Ruth understood it. And we eventually know where all of that led. Stay the course, friends.